Let's record, and then okay, I can start. Okay. So just a bit of recap in what we were doing previously, chapter 14, the disappearance of Lord Krishna. It was almost finished. So these were the subtopics that we discussed. First was Yudhishthira Maharaj observes ill omens. So we all heard about the different ill omens. It was quite fantastic and quite dramatic as well. So anyway, it's expected because it was the end of a yuga. So from it was heralding the beginning of Kali Yuga, the most inauspicious of all yugas. So and observing all these omens, Yudhishthira Maharaj became he had some trepidation, and he was thinking what could have happened, and he in the heart of hearts he knew that it's due to Lord Krishna's disappearance, because he was already warned by Narada Muni before this to expect this to happen. And when he saw this kind of omens, he was already there in his heart, but it was extremely painful for him to bear it. So he was like wondering, maybe it could be some other reason. Could it be something else? And eventually Arjuna also returned, because Yudhishthira Maharaj actually sent Arjuna to Dwaraka to Tanya Kabarla, to ask how is Lord Krishna, how is the Vrishnis and all that. But for 7 months, Arjuna was missing in action. And finally, he returned to Hastinapura. And the manner of his return further reinforced Yudhishthira Maharaj's trepidation. So we saw how Arjuna returned. He was dejected. The luster was lost in him, right? So these were observed. And in today's discussion, sorry, what's happening? Okay, so therefore, we saw the reversal of time, seasonal disruptions, how sinful and quarrelsome the population became. And then we saw Raudram disturbances, horrible disturbances, very fearful disturbances. And these disturbances were of the body and mind. And the disturbances were also earthly, from the living entities around, like the jackal vomiting blood and things like vomiting fire, right? And also celestial disturbances, like the planets all like having a meteorite shower, that kind of thing, rain. And and despite all this, Yudhishthira Maharaj was thinking, it was only due to Krishna's presence that we were able to experience all these wonderful things, like Rajyam, great kingdom, having wonderful wives, Daraha, Prana, even our entire life we owe to Lord Krishna for saving us in the Mahabharata war. So Yudhishthira Maharaj like that discussed. And he was also basically recounting how this entire world was very fortunate simply because the lotus feet, Bhagavata Pade, the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, left footprints on the ground. So while the lotus feet of the Lord was touching the earth blossomed beautifully. And we also read about that in previous chapters. So today we will continue the last part here. Yudhishthira Maharaj questions Arjuna. So Arjuna is returned and Yudhishthira Maharaj questions him. The king, remembering the indications of the sage Narada, questioned Arjuna in the midst of friends. So this is how it continues. So we also discussed that to some extent. It was from verse 25 to 44. So we discussed most of it. Vrishni Swasti. So basically Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking Arjuna, though in his heart of hearts, he knew that he suspected very strongly it was Lord Krishna's disappearance, but he didn't want to go directly into that. He was hoping against hope. It could be something else, So he was generally asking, he was observing the etiquettes. So he was asking Arjuna, how are the Vrishnis? How are the Bhoja dynasty? How is Krishna's family? So he was asking about various members and then eventually how is Balaram, how is Krishna. He start talking about Krishna Sukham. So first was Swasti. Swasti means basically, well-being. Swasti, well-being. So how is Krishna's well-being? How is the family's well-being? Then he's talking about Krishna Sukham. How was Krishna enjoying himself among the Vrishni dynasty? How is Balaram enjoying himself surrounded by all these members? Then Yudhishthira Maharaj went on to speak about the sweet partiality of Lord Krishna. How Krishna, despite being the Supreme Lord, and being the Supreme Lord, he is, equal to all living entities, right? Sama, that's one of the qualities of Krishna. But still, he had a special partiality to his pure devotees. And this was discussed also about how, he was so partial to Satyabhama and to the Vrishni. So we stopped over here. We discussed previously how Satyabhama, obtained the Parijata tree from heaven. So after that, we will be discussing Yudhishthira Maharaj, how he is hoping against hope about the possible causes of Arjuna's dejectedness. Because seeing Arjuna dejected in front of him, he was thinking, what could be the dejected reason? What could be the reason? So Yudhishthira, being a very learned person, being the incarnation of Yamaraj himself, he knows all the causes of dejectedness. So he was thinking, could it be ill health? So these are the 4 causes of dejectedness in any person. A person can be dejected due to ill health. He could be dejected due to dishonor. He could also be dejected due to loss of potency or loss of capability, right? And the last reason for dejectedness is neglect of etiquette. So all these we will cover in today. So Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking, is it your ill health? Is it dishonor? Is it loss of potency? Hoping against hope that Arjuna will say something. So we stopped here previously. If you remember this picture, this is the picture of Lord Krishna with Rukmini and Satyabhama with the Parijata tree. So why we brought this up is because it's highlighting the special partiality that Lord Krishna has for his devotees, especially his very devoted devotees. How he was behaving just like a henpecked husband to his queens. Why? Because he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He didn't have to do that. But because the queens were so surrendered to him, because the queens knew nothing else other than the lotus feet of Krishna and his service, the Supreme Lord was sold out to them, to their loving reciprocation. So he was willing to do anything for them. So even if they were to ask, give me the Parijata tree of heaven, Lord Krishna would do it for them. And this was the sweet partiality that the Lord had. So like that, another example is what we are continuing now. So the Bhagavatam continues. The great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of Lord Sri Krishna, always remain fearless in every respect. And therefore their feet trample over the Sudharma assembly house, which the best demigods deserved, but which was taken away from them. Oh, I just forgot. I forgot to say Prabhupada Pranam Mantra. Just excuse me a moment. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimha Iti Namini. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Iti Namini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyamari Paschatya Desatarine. Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pankum Langayatim Kirim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram. Sorry for that. Okay. Right. So the great heroes of the Yadu dynasty, being protected by the arms of Lord Sri Krishna, always remain fearless in every respect. And therefore their feet trample over the Sudharma assembly house, which the best demigods deserved, but which was taken away from them. So this is again another show of Lord's partiality. So, the Yadu dynasties were all wonderful, wonderful devotees actually. And, there was Akrura, there was Uddhava, there was Vasudev, the father of Krishna. So like that, there are wonderful Ugrasena, the king. So there were so many wonderful devotees of Lord Sri Krishna. and they were all sold out to him. We all heard in the reception of, how Krishna was received in Dwaraka. So that particular chapter, we heard how they just dropped everything and just ran, and they came to approach him with such fanfare. They brought elephants, they brought chariots just to go and receive Lord Krishna with the pomp and grandeur that he would deserve. So that it was, and how the prostitutes all came, how the ladies were all standing on top of the buildings, showering flowers at him. So so in therefore Lord Krishna was simply sold out to all of them. And he was, again, this is another example. The Sudharma assembly house is a very wondrous assembly house. It was actually built by Vishwakarma, who was the architect of the Devas, and it was extremely wondrous. So and one of the, I believe it was Samba, or one of the sons of Krishna, who desired this assembly house. He thought, not for themselves, they thought that Lord Krishna is on earth, so I should have this assembly house here to honor Lord Krishna properly. So they had this kind of desire, and they approached Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna, just to please them, he actually went and took this assembly house from heaven, away from Indra. So Indra actually lost two things. So he lost the Parijata. He didn't lose it, he still had it, but he lost the distinction that he was the only one who could enjoy the Parijata. So now, no longer. It was enjoyed by even people on earth. So the same way, the Sudharma assembly was also taken for the pleasure of the Vrishnis, just to please the Vrishnis. And the Vrishnis lived only to please Krishna. So this was the partiality, the sweet partiality that we see Lord Krishna displaying. So Prabhupada says, those who are directly servitors of the Lord are protected by the Lord from all fearfulness. And they also enjoy the best of things, even if they are forcibly accumulated. So this is just to show how, to what extent Lord Krishna would even apparently break dharma, sort of. We saw how Bhishma Dev, he was willing to break his promise just to satisfy Bhishma's request. So he doesn't care. So he was only looking into the happiness of his devotees. And then Prabhupada continues, the Lord is equal in behavior to all living beings. Why is he equal? Because he's equal to all living beings. He gives everybody equal opportunities. Every living entity has equal opportunity to become a devotee or to become otherwise. So it's like, how the parents give the children equal opportunity. But along the course of growing up, some children will become, they will follow the father, they will follow the mother, and they will, please the parents, whereas some children will not do so much. So though the parents are equal, so naturally there would be some partiality towards, some loving reciprocation extra towards the filial child. So in this way, the Lord is similarly in the same context as well. He is equal to everyone. There is no inequality, but partiality is there for the devotees, where his heart reposes his heart is more towards his devotees. So we can read more and more about this beautiful relationship of the Lord. So such a wonderful master the Supreme Lord is, right? So then the Bhagavatam continues. So after Yudhishthira receives Arjuna, Yudhishthira asks Arjuna. Now he questions Arjuna in front of everybody. My brother Arjuna, please tell me whether your health is all right. So health is referred here as Annamayam. So we have the Annamayam kosha, after Annamayam is the basic level. Living entities, they need food, rice, grains, and food to survive. So there are some people who are in the food or basic existence consciousness. That's the basic level, Annamayam. Then higher than Annamayam, there is the Manomayam, which is of the mind. So like that, it goes on all the way to Anandamayam. So like that, there are 6. So we won't go into the technicality of that, but the most basic is health, and health can actually affect the luster of a person. You know, we have seen people who have terminal disease, or you know, when the body dies, how the tejas just disappears, the luster. So one of the reasons of dejection, or one of the reasons for the loss of luster or the loss of tejas, this luster is a special luster, you know, ayurbuka, they call it. It's like a kala. In Tamil, they say kala, the kala. So that tejas is very obvious in very highly spiritually advanced people. You can see that. So, and also people who are very potent spiritually or even materially, they have a certain potency in them, which sometimes is very obvious to see. So how have you appear to have lost your bodily luster, teja. One of the ways to get teja is also, you know, brahmacharis, who, like those who are practicing celibacy, that's one of the ways for them to develop tejas. Reading scripture and studying the transcendental knowledge is also one of the ways to achieve tejas. Austerity is also another way to achieve tejas. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking why he was shocked to see Arjuna. Arjuna, he has never in his life, Yudhishthira Maharaj has never in his life seen Arjuna as dejected as he saw him at that moment. Even they've gone through so many tribulations, so many situations. They lost their kingdom, they lost their wife, even to gambling, and they so many difficult. They lost their children, their grandchildren were killed. So it was very painful. But in none of these, the Pandavas had ever lost their teja. But now Arjuna has lost his tejas. So in his depths of heart, Yudhishthira Maharaj's heart was beating very strongly. He was palpitating inside. But still, maintaining the etiquette, he was asking, is this due to others disrespecting and neglecting you? So first he asked about his health. That is the first reason for dejectedness. Then he was, and Arjuna kept quiet. He didn't respond. Then Yudhishthira was prompted to ask further, is it due to others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay at Dwaraka? Now, you know, Prabhupada mentions the etiquette for a guest is usually when the guest goes to a person's house. If he stays more than 3 days, that is not recommended, because then the guest becomes a burden to the. I mean, we shouldn't see it that way, but you know, that's how we should be considerate in that sense. So sometimes when the guest becomes a burden, the host will start thinking, when you know, when is he going to leave? So that as soon as the person thinks like that, it becomes inauspicious for both sides. So a considerate guest would not stay more than his, you know, welcome, and the standard staying period according to Prabhupada's recommendation is 3 days maximum. So anyway, so is this due to others disrespecting and neglecting you because of your long stay at Dwaraka? So he's asking, but Arjuna kept silent. It was not because of that reason. Has someone addressed you with unfriendly words or threatened you? So that is another reason, right? So if people insult you, that is, you know, in those days, in a few hundred years ago, in the knightly kingdoms of medieval Europe, the knights, you know, they would have jousting. They would fight with each other simply due to insult. And this is also seen in feudal Japan, where, you know, the samurais had a very high code of honor, and a small drop of a hat is enough to start a war. They will perceive many things as insult. But we are not talking about that kind of insult. That is more of the mode of passion and ignorance. So, but nevertheless, one of the causes of dishonor is also due to unfriendly words or threats. Yudhishthira continues, could you not give charity to one who asked? Or could you not keep your promise to someone? Now, this is very important also. If one is in a situation where one cannot give charity to someone who asks, one should consider themselves extremely fallen, and he or she should feel very sorry about the situation and repent and cry to the Lord. So that is how one should behave in that aspect. But again, it depends on the charity person is asking. I mean, when you talk about charity, it's we are talking about a deserving charity, a deserving cause. So one should be able to give even a small amount. So that's how, you know, when guests come to our house, if we are not in a situation to give the best things that we can by right, we should give the best things. But if we cannot, at least we should give us a seat. If we are in a situation where we cannot even offer a seat, we should offer sweet words. If even that we are not able to do, then we should offer a smile of welcome, right? So, you know, we talked about this in Bhishma's deathbed, in the arrows, you know, Bhishma was lying on the arrows. We discussed this also to some extent. So could you not do any of these things, especially for a Kshatriya prince like Arjuna? It's very painful if he cannot do these things. So these three reasons are the causes of dishonor. So this one is the causes of loss of tejas is one is lust, one is due to ill health, the other is due to dishonor. And Yudhishthira Maharaj continues, you are always the protector of the deserving living beings. So especially for a Kshatriya or for a manager or for a leader, this is very important. A manager or a Kshatriya or a leader or a king should give due protection to his subjects or to his underlings or to his you know, people who are dependent on him. So she should not, and this protection means that they are not exploited. So it's not just physical protection, it's emotional protection. It is protection in not being exploited by other people or by other, you know. So that is very important. So were you not able to protect deserving living beings? So it's very interesting that he used the word deserving living beings, right? So some should be killed and some should be protected. So who are these that especially are deserving living beings? So Yudhishthira Maharaj then said, could you not protect Brahmanas? Brahmanam, right? And Brahmanas, why Brahmanas need protection? So we will talk about that shortly. And could you not give protection to the Balas? Balam. Balam means the young children. So children naturally need to be given protection, right? And could you not give protection to Gam, the cows, or to Vridam, the old people, right? Could you not give protection to Roginam, those who are diseased and who are actually afflicted? Could you not give protection to Striyam, chaste ladies, right? So these are the 6 deserving people who need protection. Protection from exploitation and protection from being harmed. So one would ask, you know, why though? Why do these 6 need protection? So it's a very long topic. We won't go into too much into that. Basically, Brahmana is needed because they are the head of society. If the head is cut off, the body cannot go anywhere in the right direction, right? If a society doesn't have a suitable leader, we all know what happens to a society when the leader is not suitable. So we have many examples and we have gone through many situations. So it's very, very important. The leader has to know the goal of life. He has to be suitably humble. He has to know the Vedas. He has to know what is correct and what is not correct. So that is very, very important. And only a Brahmana is capable of doing this. That's why a Brahmana guides even Kshatriyas, even kings. And because a Brahmana has taken the vow of non-violence, he cannot protect himself. So therefore, see how beautiful the system is. The Brahmanas depend on the Brahmanas are actually independent. They depend on the Lord, but by the Lord's mercy, by the Lord's arms, which manifest as Kshatriyas, the Kshatriyas in return protect the Brahmanas. And by protecting the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas gain. They get opulence, they get power, they get their tejas. There are many examples where simply by serving the Brahmanas, the Devas became powerful, the demons also became powerful by serving the Brahmanas. And even kings become powerful by serving the Brahmanas. So that's very, very important because they know how to exactly guide society in the right way. Currently, society is, sorry, did anyone say something? It's a bit soft, I can't hear. Okay, anyway, So currently society is not led by Brahmanas. You can see the direction the world is going towards. You know, it's simply, some people say it's being led by Vaishyas, but I disagree. It's not led by Vaishyas, because Vaishyas actually are Aryans. They know the goal of life also to an extent, and they protect cows. So cow protection has to be there if it's Vaishyas, but it's not, that's not the case. So actually it's those who are lower than Shudras, and those who are lower than Shudras are running the world as it is at the moment. So that's the problem. Brahmanas, right? In Kali Yuga, this is not ticked. What about Balam? Children. Children is obvious. Everybody can understand. The children are the future. They are the continuing generation. Like Prabhupada will always say, if the children don't take up Krishna, we spend so much of energy and blood to preach to people. One of the easiest way to preach is to preach to your children. If the children, they are already born with you, they're already taking association with us. So if each of us have 6 children, for example, all 6 become devotees, then we don't have to preach so much, you see. We can quickly, this is what the Muslims are doing. They basically have that kind of a mentality, but you know, it's not so easy to bring them up in devotion circles also. But anyway, that's protection for children. Balam. And then Gam, cows. Now, to not protect cows is to commit suicide, because cow is essential to the living environment of this world. If you were to read certain books on the ecology or cow ecology, you know, how the cow and the land is intimately connected, how the cow dung is actually excellent soil. The topsoil of the earth is basically extremely fertile due to the cow dung. There is nothing that compares with that. No other, because cow dung can actually deteriorate and it actually becomes like sand, and that becomes the earth. And it has the richest, highest content of oxygen and the highest content of vitamin B12, because vitamin B12 is produced by bacteria, and this bacteria is found to grow extremely well in cow dung environment. So that's why, you know, people those days, they don't have, even if you're vegetarian, they don't have vitamin B12 deficiency, because they have always play with cow dung. They will, recently I read somewhere also, there was a village where once a year they have a cow dung festival. What they do is they create an entire area made of cow dung, and then the people come there and wrestle in that mud pit. It's like a cow dung, and then all the ladies also are there. They come and throw cow dung patties at each other. It's like a whole, something like Holi, but simply with cow dung. And they make it a point to do it. So they say, like, you know, I do this, I don't get sick for the whole year. That's what, when they interviewed, when NTV interviewed the Indians, that's the villagers, this is what they replied. So anyway, so that's gum. It's very, very essential for economy, and also for the well-being of humans and cows are coexisting. In fact, Prabhupada goes as far as to say that this entire planet is meant for the cows, not so much for the humans. And you know, we have Goloka, not Naraloka, Goloka, which is Kawloka. So then we have Vridham, protection for the elderly. And why this is important? Because this is to develop culture. If we fail to protect the elderly, the children will go astray, because they will see that there's lack of culture in this family. So that's very important. And it's also to protect the elderly, because in those days, at least, the elderly were presumably wise, and they were at that time. So, and why they were wise? Because they were well trained, and they continued the tradition. So, like, you know, Bhishma Dev, so people, Dronacharya, so these were wise people. So therefore, protection of the old age is very important. It's also a setting of culture. Roginam, disease, this is the display of mercy. How one, you know, someone once said, I think it was, I don't know, Gandhi or Einstein, a civilization is judged by how they treat the least of their members, right? So those who are sick and afflicted, how they are treated. So if we can see that, then we can see how great the civilization is. So it's very important. So in Hindu civilization, in Sanatan Dharma, it's clearly shown that roginam, the disease, those who are afflicted certainly need protection. Striyam, ladies, chaste ladies. So that's redundant because Striyam means ladies, and ladies means chaste ladies by default. So this is also obvious in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2, chapter 1. Chapter 1, Arjuna speaks about how it's so important to protect ladies, and we can read about that purport. So I don't want to go too deep into this here. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj says, could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelter? Arjuna again kept silent. Now it's interesting Yudhishthira asked all these questions because true enough, Arjuna failed to give protection to all these people. And we will read more about this later on, right? Not today, because after Krishna left, there was a pastime where, Arjuna had to protect all the remainder, the wives of Krishna, and how the wives of Krishna were kidnapped by dacoits. So Arjuna failed to protect them. So we won't discuss that pastime currently at this time. So Yudhishthira Maharaj continues. So he was basically highlighting loss of potency. If you remember, this is the third reason for the loss of luster or dejection. So one is health, the other is dishonor, and the other is loss of potency. He lost his capability. Arjuna, who could defeat so many wonderful heroes like Bhishma to so many others, while Krishna was present, could not even fight some bandits when they threatened Arjuna. So therefore, you can imagine Arjuna's dejection in that situation. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj continues with, have you contacted a woman of impeachable character? So that is also another reason. So this is also very, very important. That's why celibacy and fidelity is a very, very important aspect in Grihastha ashram and also in Brahmacharya ashram. So it is important that marriage has to take place between those who are, brought up properly in the right, in the right family. So it has to be. So this is very important, and it has to be protected. And if it's not, then the man loses considerably, actually. So he loses his character because cleanliness is destroyed, and one of the legs of religion is broken. And that is very dangerous. That creates the continual degradation of society. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj continues, or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Now, actually, the first one is true for Arjuna, right? Because Arjuna was supposed to protect the wives of Krishna after Krishna has left. Not all the wives, the main 8 wives all committed sati together with Krishna. But the 16,000 wives Krishna saved from Baumasura. So those ladies were abducted by the dacoits. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj asks, or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Now, for a Kshatriya, it's very important. This is one of the codes of a Kshatriya. So if a Kshatriya is approached by a lady for union, for a relationship, if the lady is deserving, from a good family and all that, the Kshatriya cannot say no. So if he does, then it's like a slap on the the honor of the Kshatriya, the male ego, the Kshatriya ego, whatever it is. So that is part of the makeup, because Kshatriyas are in some extent mode of passion. So this is part of that makeup during that time. So we have seen these several situations. And anyway, you don't want to get distracted with that. Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? And true enough, this also happened to Arjuna. He was along the way defeated by the dacoits. When he tried to take his Gandiva bow to fight off the dacoits who were attacking him, somehow the bow would not work. The bowstring became lax, and he couldn't even fit the arrows properly. So it was completely unnatural, and Arjuna was completely defeated. So it's interesting because later Prabhupada will give his purport on this. So then Yudhishthira Maharaj continues, have you not taken care of Vridha, the elderly old men, and Balakan, the children? Have you not taken care of them in terms of etiquette, not in terms of protection? Here, Yudhishthira Maharaj is now talking about etiquette. Have you left them and taken your meals alone? So this is important also. As we know, we should first of all, a grihastha or a leader should show by example. He should first of all ensure that his dependents are well fed and well taken care of. We have mentioned this before also in one of the previous lectures. You know, even the Shudras, before a sacrifice is done, before a fire sacrifice or a yagya is done, the Brahmanas will fast, but the Shudras are fed first. They are ensured that they are fed and they are completely satisfied so that in their minds they are peaceful and they don't have any negativity. You know, because when we are going to have a yagya, when we're going to have a religious sacrifice, it's important that there should be no negativity. So Brahmanas, they understand because they have higher knowledge. So they can accept the austerities. But Sudras, sometimes they cannot understand. So they need to be, and you know, like children also. So they need to be satisfied. You cannot expect them to, you know, fast and wait until the yagya is over and then only. So when they are satisfied, they will also participate in the yagya in a very open manner. And there will be only nothing but positivity within that situation. So we can learn a lot from etiquette here. So have you left them and taken your meals alone? So this is loss of etiquette. Yudhishthira Maharaj is questioning Arjuna. So loss of etiquette is another reason for loss of luster, teja, right? And dejectedness. So if an honorable person, if a devotee or someone was not able to maintain proper etiquette to deserving people, then it is actually a very shameful thing. It is, one should feel extremely dejected and one should feel, you know, embarrassed, and they should beg for forgiveness from the Lord. So, you know, to some extent, even the Malays, they have this kind of etiquette. They ensure that, you know, kalau makan, jangan makan sendiri. Yeah? So they like to share. So we also, it's basically from this Vedic knowledge, all this comes from. Have you committed some unpardonable mistake? So akshamam means unpardonable, an abominable mistake, which is considered to be abominable. Jugupsitam. So jugupsitam means abominable, extremely, you know, extremely low down, extremely terrible, very, very sinful. So have you committed something like this? Yudhishthira Maharaj asked, is that the reason why you are dejected? Please tell me, O Arjuna. So still Arjuna remains silent. Finally, Yudhishthira Maharaj, he has ran out of reasons already. He gave so many reasons. He has completely ran out of reasons. And now he's saying in a quiet voice, or is it that you are feeling empty, sunyo, for all time? Because you might have lost your dear friend, Hridayanatma Bandhuna. So Hridayanatma Bandhuna. Hridaya means heart, Atma. The Atma close to your heart. Bandhu means friend. Or is it that you have lost your dear friend? Yudhishthira Maharaj is asking with shaking voice to Arjuna. So this is a very beautiful verse. Kachit prastata menata hridayanatma bandhuna sunyo asmi rahito nityam manyasete anyatha naruk. So the word sunyo is used. You know, we have a similar example in the Sikshashtakam, right? Yuga itam nimeshena chaksusa pravasayitam sunya itam jagat sarvam govinda virahe name sunya itam, feeling empty. Even a few minutes, you know, it feels like a 12 years or more. and I feel lost, completely empty. And Yudhishthira is asking, oh, my brother Arjuna, I can think of no other reason for you becoming so dejected. Because Arjuna was silent throughout the entire questioning. And with that, we end chapter 14. So since we have a little bit more time, we will continue on to chapter 15. So before that, this is again a recap of chapter 14. Yudhishthira Maharaj questions Arjuna. So going through again the Vrishni Swasti, how Yudhishthira Maharaj asks about the well-being of the Vrishnis. How Krishna is enjoying amongst the Bhoja dynasty and the Vrishnis. Krishna's sweet partiality with the Satyabhama and the queens, and also with the Vrishnis like the Sudharma assembly house. And Maharaj Yudhishthira's hope against hope. You know, why the causes of Arjuna's dejectedness. Ultimately, it is due to the loss of Krishna, intimate friend. So going now to chapter 15, the Pandavas, and the title of chapter 15 is The Pandavas Retire Timely. And Suta Goswami continues. He continues the narration to the assembly in Naimisharanya. Arjuna, the celebrated friend of Lord Krishna, was grief-stricken because of his strong feeling of separation from Krishna, over and above all Maharaj Yudhishthira's speculative inquiries. So the first few verses will talk about the Sunyayitam principle, the Sunyayitam Jagat Sarvam, how Arjuna was feeling completely empty and void and dejected and grief-stricken due to the loss of Krishna. Due to grief, Arjuna's mouth and lotus-like heart had dried up. So here I'm putting a picture of a dried up lotus. Anyway, therefore his body lost all luster. So Suta Goswami is describing what was the reason. Now, remembering the Supreme Lord, he could hardly utter a word in reply. So, you know, he was completely dejected. And when he came to Yudhishthira Maharaj started speaking about Krishna and asking him. Arjuna started remembering Krishna and Krishna's instructions. So we will see, we have heard how dejected Arjuna is. Now, you will be amazed to hear in this chapter, towards the end, how Arjuna completely transforms after he completes his narration. So it's very interesting. Not sure whether we can cover that today, but let's see. So remembering, Arjuna begins, with great difficulty, he checked the tears of grief that smeared his eyes. Zoom is very irritating. Okay. He was very distressed. And because Lord Krishna was out of his sight, and he increasingly felt affection for him. So the affection started to grow in his heart. So this word is very important, this statement. Because Lord Krishna was out of his sight, and he increasingly felt affection for him. So this is what Mahaprabhu is trying to explain. There are two ways we can develop relationship with Krishna, right? One is in union and one is in separation. So Vipralamba Seva, or service in separation. So Arjuna was manifesting this. Because Lord Krishna was out of his sight, and when Yudhishthira Maharaj started speaking about it, and Arjuna started remembering, slowly the affection started increasing more and more in his heart. Remembering Lord Krishna and his well-wishes, benefactions, intimate familial relationship, and his chariot driving. So Arjuna, then you can see Arjuna, you can imagine how Arjuna would feel. Krishna and Arjuna were very, very good friends. There are several categories of friends. There is a friend called Mitra, a friend called Bandhu, a friend called, I forgot the other Sanskrit names, Hridaya something, like that. They have different category. So like Mitra means, I mean well for you, but it's not a very good, very close friend. Like, best friend will be Bandhu, very close. We share a lot of things. Like Arjuna and Krishna were Bandhus, very, very, very close. But even more than that is like how he was with the Gopas, So that is even more intimate. So there are different grades of friendship. So Arjuna was remembering Lord Krishna and his different, relationship, how Krishna was so friendly with him, how Krishna will put his arm around Arjuna and Arjuna will put his arm around Krishna, they will walk together like that. And how, they sometimes they will share the same bed. Arjuna will lie on the same bed, and after that, Krishna will come, and then Arjuna will get up and say, "Oh, Krishna, come and sit here." Though the bed was contaminated, he just slept. But being friends, they will just sit on each other's bed and they will talk. So remembering this kind of pastimes and all the different times that Arjuna, they say a friend in need is a friend indeed. So how Krishna had so many times saved Arjuna in so many situations, been with Arjuna in so many situations. So this is a picture of the Akshaya Patra incident. How, when Durvasa Muni came, sent by Duryodhana's evil intentions to come and cause havoc to the Pandavas, when Durvasa Muni came, he couldn't, the Pandavas were distraught because Draupadi had already eaten. And the Akshaya Patra is a very special pot given by the sun god. It will only work, it will produce unlimited food, but it will only work if Draupadi had not eaten yet. The moment Draupadi finally finishes her meal, it will go empty for that particular day until the next day. So, Duryodhana knew that this Draupadi will, he told Durvasa Muni, you don't go around lunchtime, you go around 4 o'clock like that, because, by that, the Pandavas are a bit strange. That time only they'll have lunch. Duryodhana purposely did this. So even then, in that situation, Draupadi was crying and thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen? We're going to be cursed by Durvasa Muni. Already we are living in poverty. Already we are living in the forest. What more can happen to us? But immediately she thought of Krishna, and Krishna, just like that, from Dwaraka, he appeared in front of Draupadi. And quickly he asked, where? Give me the pot, give me the pot. Draupadi said, but I had eaten. And Krishna said, no, bring it to me. And then he found a small morsel, he ate it, and he burped. and then all the Durvasa Muni and his thousands of disciples also, they felt they were burping again and again and again in the while they were taking a bath, waiting for the food to be cooked. And after that, Krishna told Yudhishthira, you send your brother Bhima to go and invite them now, and tell Bhima to carry his club. So Bhima went and carried his club and went to the river, and then took his club, and then he said, okay, food is ready, all of you come. And then, Durvasa Muni, they all saw Bhima's club, and then they all saw, we cannot eat, we are so full. I'm sure all of us have had that feeling many times in our lives. I know I have. When we cannot, I remember once in one of the Vyasa Pujas in Vrindavan, ate so much until, so like that, they couldn't eat another morsel. So they, rather than face the wrath of Yudhishthira and face the wrath of Bhima, they all ran away. They gave some excuse and they ran away. So like that, so many situations Krishna had saved Arjuna. And thinking like this, one by one, Arjuna became overwhelmed and breathing very heavily began to speak. Arjuna said, O king, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who treated me exactly like an intimate friend, has left me alone. Thus, my astounding power, which astonished even the demigods, is no longer with me. So he's reflecting. This must be the reason. Because Krishna, Krishna was here, I had all these things, but now he's gone, I no longer have them. So Prabhupada gives his purport here, very important point. The astounding powers of Arjuna were astonishing even to the denizens of heaven. But they were no longer required because the Mahabharata war was over. And because they were no longer required, Prabhupada says they were not meant for going back home, back to Godhead. So you don't need astonishing powers. So therefore, we don't need siddhis, right? We don't need great powers, great positions, great awards or whatever. This is not necessary for going back to Godhead. Paurusham Nirushu. In fact, Krishna says, right, I am the ability in men. I am the prowess of the powerful. Tejas Vinam Aham, Bhagavad Gita 7:10. So Prabhupada says the lesson is therefore that no one should be puffed up for his powers, no matter how great that person may be, how capable that person may be, how qualified that person may be, because these were all coming from no one else but the Supreme Lord, right? The sane man should therefore rather feel obliged to the Lord for such benefactions and must utilize such power. So there is a responsibility. He must utilize such powers for the service of the Lord. Okay. So, there's a wonderful verse in Bhagavad Gita. Yat vibhutimam sattvam Srimad urjitam evava tat eva vagachatvam mama tejo amsa sambhavam. So everything, every beautiful thing that's in this universe is nothing but a spark of my splendor. So everything wonderful, everything great, everything, that's worth talking about is nothing but a small spark of the Lord's splendor. So we should not be puffed up in that sense, because actually by right, our body cannot even function if the Paramatma was not sitting with us in our heart. This is the reason the Paramatma sits with us in our heart, to make the body function, to grant the desire of the souls. Know that all opulent, beautiful, and glorious creations spring from but a spark of my splendor. So Prabhupada says, no one therefore can be independently powerful in any measure without being endowed by the Lord. So we should remember this constantly, and it will help us to achieve the understanding that we should be humble. So this is some of the things which can remember. So now coming back to Arjuna's reflections, Arjuna is reflecting, oh Yudhishthira Maharaj, I have just lost him, right? Whose separation for even a moment would render all the universes unfavorable and void. So again, sunyayitam jagat sarvam. So this is how a devotee would feel with the loss of, Krishna consciousness. So like bodies without life. So I have just lost him and would render all the universes unfavorable and void, just like bodies without life. So Arjuna was feeling just like that. Sunyayitam jagat sarvam. So Prabhupada says, for without the living being, the material body has no value. So, just like how a body is valuable only when there is a soul residing within that body, right? Similarly, I am the super soul, O Arjuna, seated in the hearts of all living entities, right? Similarly, without Paramatma, the living being has no status quo. So like how I mentioned just now, the Paramatma has many functions within the living entity's heart. So without the living entity, the body has no value. Similarly, without the Paramatma, the jiva has no standing. The jiva has no ability. The jiva has no capability. So this is the point that is being passed by Krishna in this pastime about how Arjuna lost his potency. And then in Bhagavad Gita further, Brahmano hi pratishtaham, and I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, right? So This is Krishna telling, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. So similarly, even Brahman or Paramatma has no value or no locus standi without the Supreme Lord Krishna. So this point is a little out of topic, but nevertheless, it's interesting that the same parallel is drawn. Without the soul, the body has no value. Without the Paramatma, the living entity loses his capability, has no standing. And without Bhagavan, Brahman and Paramatma has no locus standi. Locus standi means no case, no argument. There is no cause of existence. So Bhagavan is the cause of everything. Sarva Karana Karanam. So therefore he has the name Sarva Karana Karanam. So though Brahman and Paramatma are also aspects of God, but they are dependent on Bhagavan. So this is very important, interesting point which Prabhupada is raising here. So we are now completed what I wanted to finish for chapter 5. So we were talking about Yugayitam Nimeshana Chakshusha Pravarsayitam. So Bhagavatam verses 1 to 4 was mainly talking about how Arjuna was feeling so devoid and so dejected, and due to his loss of his dear friend. And verses 5 and 6 were directly highlighting Sunyaitam Jagat Sarvam. Why he was feeling void, completely void? Because Govinda Virahename, Govinda is not in front of him. Govinda is not in front of his eyes. So this was what was covered previously. And chapter 15 will continue further. We will see Arjuna will start recounting how, he will start remembering, just like how Bhishma Dev started remembering at the time of his death. So like that, Arjuna will start remembering all the different times when Krishna was there. And as he starts remembering, something very beautiful, something very, very interesting starts happening to Arjuna. And we will see this further in the next time that we talk about this chapter 15. We will see how at the end, Arjuna is completely transformed. We will also see in the end of Arjuna's narration how Yudhishthira Maharaj is also transformed. And in that way, it's and there's a wonderful philosophy behind that also. So we will hear about that later. So for now, thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Right.